I want to welcome Frederick Vaulx, Vice President at Prometheus Computing, the Chief Technology Officer at Value Technology Foundation, Industry Vice Chair for the ACT-IAC Emerging Technology Community of Interest, which is how I know him, the Co-Chair for the ACT-IAC Emerging Technology Blockchain Working Group, and Fred, I count you amongst my friends within our network of work community. So thank you for joining me today.
Hello, Jeremy.
So for those who have never met you or had a chance to interact with you, share a bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, and what you do.
Okay, yes, so Frederick Vaulx. Maybe by my accent, you can tell I'm from France. So originally, I was born in France. I studied computer science there, and around 2003, I moved to the US to do an internship at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So that's how I ended up here in the Washington, D.C. area. And so I started working there to do research and to do development around the different research fields that NIST had. So supporting the researchers by developing software, developing softwares, web applications, and so on. Later, because I've always been curious and not just interested in the technology and how it's applied, but also how it can be used, made as a business, and how to manage the different pieces. I also started getting more responsibilities, and as the life of an immigrant coming to the US, so I started at a J1, then I moved to an H1B, then a green card, then citizenship. And so when I became a contractor, that's where I joined Prometheus Computing, and from here I moved from just working on software architecture, software development, and starting more doing the business administration of the first the contracts, then the contracting vehicles, and then became the vice president of the company.
Wow, that's an amazing story, right? I mean, for an immigrant, it's always great to hear that what you would hope could happen, right? To go through that immigration process, which does take quite a bit of time, that it would be successful and beneficial to you. Yeah.
I mean, it's very nice to sort of like see the blends of culture, sort of like come from one place and then discovering how things are done in another place, understanding that, usually there is a lot of shared values, even though then the way that they may be implemented or that is a little bit different. It's very humbling, and it's very energizing to sort of like being able to witness that and to live it. Yeah.
So rewinding a little bit, because you kind of skipped over it. What made you go into computer science to begin with?
It's I think a little bit of a lot of things. Even though, I mean, even like back in 2003, or I mean a little bit before, we could start seeing, the internet evolving, the web application and the web world sort of like getting developed, softwares being implemented in a lot of different industries, right? It was still not necessarily like as ubiquitous as we can have it now, but you could start seeing that in a few years, you would have some sort of software or like digital life in any industry or any sector of the society that you're in, and actually in the world. And so, since I always wanted to also discover a little bit what was going on outside of my own community, I was like, I need to pick a job that's gonna allow me to export my skills or my knowledge outside of my community or outside of my country. So computer science was a good way to do that, and it helped me, yes, because I learned it in France, but I started really more exercising it in the US. But now with when we see the type of technologies that we're working with, like decentralized technology, like blockchain or DLTs, or like how AI starts to be everywhere. Yeah, it's important to know that the new way of communicating, I would say, with the world.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I know how involved you are with some of the emerging technology stuff. What drives you? What's bringing you into that portion of technology, right? I mean, you could just do regular business process development or solution development for organizations. What's bringing you to that cutting edge of research and emerging technology?
So curiosity. I think it's very energizing to see how people come up with new ideas, or when you have like technologies that are developing or like coming up like little plants, and then trying to map that or to tie it to actual problems or actual challenges, or even something that works well, but maybe optimizing it. So how like the technology can be used to optimize it, but also to not necessarily be an equalizer, but be a force that brings other parts, bring them up, right? Because all of a sudden we can use the technology to scale, right? Horizontally maybe, where like we've learned how to optimize a particular process with some sort of like a software or some sort of of code, and then hopefully we can export it and give that to another population or to another society, so that they can try to replicate it with their own rules, obviously. But nowadays also, because I'm a dad of two young girls, it's important to me that they sort of like start seeing a little bit what that means to have the technology, and then to see how they can use it within their everyday life, and that they can learn it, right? And so we start programmation already, even though it's like 6 years old or 3 years old, and because I very much see the software as like yet another language, right? So you learn French, or you learn English, you learn Spanish, and you learn how to code. And if you want to talk to your computers, or if you want to talk to all the machines that are going to start having this communication interface, they need to learn these languages. So yeah,
I see an interesting future for you when your kids are of the age where you're trying to block them from things on the internet, and you've already taught them how to code around it. That would be very interesting.
Oh, I'll be mad and proud at the same time. Yes.
Right.
But it's already a little bit, yes, happening in the way that with the pandemic, and then the fact that we had to have computers, for the lucky students who could have access to the computers. All the schools, right? And the teaching is done online, but you have Zoom meetings. So now they know exactly where to go, but they also know how to open new tabs. They know how to go to like PBS Kids, or like to, like Netflix or thing like that. And so they already know how to hack the school, the school time. So it's like, oh no.
Right. I get that. Proud at the same time as you're like, oh, really? But it's always fun. That's really interesting. I'll have to keep up with you and hear how that journey goes with your kids, because you're right. It's a brand new world. Even when my oldest was younger, we didn't have the technology that we have now so easily and readily available, where I can order it on Amazon, have it here, and then have them play with it, and figure out how to do it. It was just too expensive. So that's awesome. Yeah. So you've been around a little while, and you've seen actually things from a couple different perspectives. What's something that we we do today that you think we should, focus a little attention on and maybe change it? I don't know. It's something you've observed.
I think being able to look at the technology, not just like a shiny object that we should just all like jump on and then wonder why we spend a lot of time and money on something that was not necessary. Would be one. I mean, I think it's sort of like already happening. We are like starting to learn that it's good to understand basically the characteristic of a new technology, how it can interact with the existing systems, and how maybe the systems that are existing can be modified instead of being scrapped altogether and spending 15 years to do a new one that then is already obsolete. Making sure that we understand the impact that it can have on the people that are already working in the different organizations, and how they can really be an engine, right, to actually bring ideas on how this technology could support them, instead of trying to figure out how it's going to save some money, or is going to do something that, to do something like that. The technologies, I think, are there to help us to help us move forward and see how we can include basically everybody and find them a place. There is something, I mean, that is still, I mean, very difficult to replicate, right? In terms of like the intellect and then the capabilities to ingest a lot of information and then make decisions based on the expertise that we have, and so that's something that we can work with the workforce to help them figuring out how they can be actors in their own mission, and then using the technology to support them and not replace them.
Yeah, that's a great idea. You're right, because I think early on in technology, we always focused on how can we save the money, how can we reduce the workforce possibly, right? Because we could replace somebody with an automated methodology. And you're right, that's not the way we want to do things going forward. You lose a lot of talent when you do that. You lose a lot of inherent capability. Interesting. That's a good point. So where do you see yourself going? Where do you see the area you work in, or Prometheus computing? Where do you see any of those things going here in the near future? What's your plans?
Keep on learning. I mean, like, keep on looking at like a lot of the different technologies, seeing how they can be put together to help us, down the road, and then work with whoever wants to look at how we can use the technologies to build strategies to solve some of the big challenges that we have. I'm very interested into looking how we can put together these different technologies and take a big challenge and then see how, I mean, we can put our mind together and our technologies together to sort of like solve that. What's interested in that, again, coming a little bit with this different, coming from different countries or culture, there are like maybe some challenges that if we stay at one place we don't necessarily see, but something like, why would one country be the only place where I have to be born and I have to live and I have to work and I have to then retire? Can I just retire anywhere in the world? Well, the different nations don't have the same systems, right? They don't have the same information. They don't necessarily have the same way of handling this life path, I would say. But if we go across, because you're like we're born in a country, and then you're coming into another one, but then you want to retire in the third one. Either way, to use the technology nowadays to start being able to do that, to start being able to have the flow of information, the flow of asset, the flow of the digital life, basically, be a little bit more easily managed. The other thing, something that I had in mind for a little while was to sort of like look a little bit at how can we leverage the technologies that we have today to look at how can I use that to planify my to change the way that my retirement will be. It seemed that the way that my retirement, the way that I will live my retirement is probably going to be very different from the way that my dad or his grandfather was. At least in France, before you would work in a company for almost all your life, and then you would have some sort of a pension, either by the states or maybe by the company. But nowadays it's not really the case anymore. Maybe the social security is not going to be there, even though we are paying into it. It's just going to be money that we won't see. More and more with sort of like the decentralized ways that we were starting to see some of the decentralized services that we're starting to see. It's very possible that we could have a lot of micro salaries with tons of W-2s or tons of 1099. It depends. How is that gonna work in terms of when we retire? And it seems that and so a big challenge is to find what is the value of somebody like me when I retire. Is it just my purchase power, where because I'm retired, because I'm supposed to have a pension, then I can spend, and so because I'm spending, then that's the value I have? Or do I have other value? And I argue that we have a lot of other values. At least we used to have that, right? When were in communities, and you would have the wise folks who had lived through multiple cycles, right, of things. And because they had lived through multiple cycles, because they were in a small community where they could share their knowledge that were targeted to people who needed it, then the young who had energy, who wants to like take over everything, they had some experience that could be taught to them. Well, I think, that's still the case, except that now we can do that at a more global place where we have the technologies now to connect somebody who would have the experience in the US to somebody who will need it somewhere in another country. And that should have value. And so take some blockchain, a little bit of AI, a little bit of like, type of like Series, Alexa, things like that, where I could see something where you have some sort of a questions or a challenge that you have, and you ask that to Alexa, and Alexa is not trying to answer it on its own. Alexa is going to look at the different people that it's connected to and ask a question. And so me, I am retired, and Alexa is asking me a question, and I start telling a story of what I know. And that's then is like interpreted a little bit, and then an answer is given back to the person who asked for it. It's directly mapped, and so with microtransactions, blockchain and things like that, I start as a retirement with people being able to share my stories, my experience, my view of my opinions, and then be paid for it, and somebody else is leveraging my knowledge. So it's
That's a great idea. We should immediately formulate a company and get that going.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who wants to do that, they can contact me.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Well, Fred, thank you for joining me today. It's always great to have a conversation with you and kind of pick your brain about different topics. And so I'm grateful that you came on the podcast today.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. It's a pleasure. I don't know.